I am very, very pleased to say that today I am chatting with, I don't usually do this, but we're doing something special for the Advent community. And I'm very pleased to say that someone really special that I met back in, we think September, don't we? uh,
Yeah.
just about that, Paul Sanders. Um, Photographer, landscape photographer who comes with all sorts of wonderful professional qualifications that that mean that this guy is a proper photographer. Paul used to be Times picture editor. Are you still a judge for the landscape photographer of the year?
I have been this year. Whether I will be next year remains to be seen. But
Okay, but yeah. But those are the kind of circles that you are moving in and that we are talking about. Um, and it was really lovely to bump into you when I was speaking at your church in September, and we had a lovely connection around faith and creativity and exploring and expressing our faith through and life through art and creativity and all of that. So it's really wonderful to uh, meet you here and introduce you to our wonderful Advent community. And the reason that I wanted to talk specifically was about our golden hour slot. But before we get to that, um, could you say just personally for a moment, what draws you to photography as a medium?
um, photography is, I think for me, it's authentic. I'm not somebody who can mess around with a computer and make my pictures into something else. And I like the authenticity of standing before something and choosing the moment that I committed it to film or to whatever sensor is in whatever camera I'm using. And I really enjoy that moment of connection with the subject. You know, photography started for me when I was really young. I was 14 when I first picked up my dad's camera, even though I'd been told not to. And
Hmm.
I still remember that first time because it was like electricity running through my body. It was the most powerful feeling of this is what you should do. And I've done it since I left school. Um, and every time I release a shutter, there's a moment of magic. And I I deeply connect with where I am exactly at that moment with what is in front of me and my faith. It's like this kind of wonderful sort of triangle of creativity um, that I connect deep. I shouldn't say this really because I imagine my minister at church is going to be watching at some point. But I connect more deeply with my faith when I'm out in nature photographing than I do when I stand in church. For some reason, I can't quite get my head around that side of it, but the depth of feeling I have when I make pictures, when I receive a picture um, from something that first of all seemed unassuming. I love the fact that when you study something, a beauty within it comes to you, and it's shown just to you at that moment in time, and it feels like a one-on-one connection with my faith. It's a really deep set, almost sort of emotional, spiritual connection. And I can't paint. My drawing is average, but I find that what I lack in those skills, I make up for in the way, the sort of the depth of seeing that I enjoy, that I'm gifted with.
Wow. So there's so, so many things are firing off.
Oh no.
But I wonder, and we don't have all afternoon. This is the golden hour, by the way. We are recording this kind of in the golden hour, although it's not terribly golden out there right now
No,
in
it's light
Hampshire.
grey.
Um, okay, two things that sort of pop
Yeah,
up from what you just said immediately. One is that you knew straight away that this was, I can't remember what you said, but it that this was what you must do in a
yeah,
sense. Um, would you describe that as a calling? You know, like a calling on your life to photography.
I think, I mean, to be honest, yes. Um, but I've gone a very long way about getting to this point now, where I feel that I'm starting to work with the calling. I've always worked, you know, up until sort of 10 years ago, I always worked against the calling. You know, my work in newspapers and in fashion and things like that before newspapers, it was very much more about what I wanted out of it. What was it going to do for me? How great was I going to be? You know, what
Ah,
kudos was I going to have
mm.
from winning awards and being Times picture editor? And when I got to that point at the Times, it was that you've got all of this, and actually you're so deeply unhappy because you're so far removed from where you should be, where you're meant to be. That, but having said that, if I'd not done all of that, I wouldn't now be able to appreciate where I am and use the richness of my experience to be able to get the most out of what I do now. But yeah, I do feel it's a calling, and I I feel that it's quite a funny thing because I have a conversation with God most days about my photography, and about why is it that I'm one of those people who is relentlessly struggling up a hill. When I look around me and all these other photographers at the top having a wild party, and I'm the one who's like, really, if you just wait for me, I'll get there. Oh, I'm on my way. When, you know, when can I be set free? And you know, but actually there's a lovely thing that I feel that what I do gives more to people through the fact that I'm not kind of a, you know, look at me photographer. I'm much more quiet, much more understated. And I don't follow the crowd either, but I feel that what I give back to people now through the way I teach, the way I help them experience a moment, gives them a deeper connection with what is in front of them. Whether that be, you know, I mean, some of my clients are Christians, some of them aren't. And I think that I try to show a little bit of my spirituality through how I see to perhaps help them understand that it's not all about apertures and shutter speeds and how big your lens is and whether you shoot Nikon or Canon or Fuji. It's all about what you see, how you see it, how you connect with it, and being still enough to appreciate it, you know, and
Yeah,
taking away that noise of the world, because it's in where how we live these days. It's so noisy. It's so success driven. It's so driven by perfection and the wants of what about me? You know, what can I have? What's it going to do for me? You know, but I always try and turn it around to what can we do for our subject, because we don't appreciate the subject. It's all about this is my image, whereas
right.
actually it's a collaboration. You know, so I think that when I photograph, I'm working in collaboration with God and with
Yeah.
His creation. So it's not about what I see; it's what I'm being shown.
So
Does that
so
make sense?
that reminds me of what Simone Weil says about attention being the most our attention being the most generous thing that we can that we can bring and offer, and how unmixed attention is effectively prayer. So
Yeah,
I love the sense that you're bringing your attention, almost by the sounds of it, as gift to the context that you find yourself in.
yeah, and I think it's really important that, you know, paying attention to something or somebody is is so respectful.
Yeah.
I mean, when I sort of sometimes when I talk to my son, you know, he'll be on his phone, and I'll get yeah, no, yeah, and it's that lack of attention, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it with him when I'm driving or, you know, distracted by something. But if we slow ourselves down and truly pay attention to something, to the simplest of things, we can see the beauty and the power of creation within it. Or we can see the hands of somebody who has made something through the power of creation, through their creative spirit, through their divine connection.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Are you?
Yeah,
Put
yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah,
put the
yeah,
heating on.
yeah. Just it's a beautiful space that we're entering as we're talking about this. Your specialism, for want of a
Yeah.
better word, is landscape. Tell us how
Yeah.
that is. If I'm right, am I right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So so
Loosely speaking.
so uh, in the Advent community, we love exploring the relationship that we have, with not just actually with nature, with creation, with the earth. I love to think that wherever we stand on holy ground when we are paying it that attention, because the earth is the Lord's in that sense. Um, could you just say something about, for you, what is it about landscape and being within it and slowing to see it, that just talk to me about landscape.
So for me, the land, wherever you go, the landscape has a majesty. And it doesn't matter whether it's in the UK, whether it's the sort of the flat plains of East Anglia, the mountains of the Lake District, the high mountains of Scotland, sort of the rivers that weave across the Somerset levels.
Mm.
There's a majesty to it. There's a rhythm to it, and apart from us, largely there's a harmony. And I feel that when I stand in front of the landscape, I'm looking at something that was truly created by God, shaped by man for whatever use, but created by God
Mm.
for, for us to use in a respectful way. The discussion about whether we do that is probably for another day, but the the idea of being able to stand somewhere, regardless of where it is, and see beauty in that, in the way that the hills line up, or the rivers meander, or even roads crisscross.
Mm.
There's beauty in absolutely everything. And every time I stand in a landscape and wait, most of my photography, I mean, people think the life of a photographer is largely glamorous, but most of my photography is spent standing still, listening, often with my eyes closed,
Oh.
because as a photographer, I rely wholly on my visual sense. But we experience life with all five senses. And I think sometimes if we deprive ourselves of the visual sense, you start to paint a very different picture, a much richer picture, um, of what is about. And you can tune into the smallest things, especially if you start by just rolling the sound out from where you are. What can you hear right next to you? And then you just roll out your hearing to start to see what's going on. And when I do workshops, and I say to people, just close your eyes and listen. And then, if you're sitting down, just rub your hands on whatever you're sitting on, whether it's the earth or whether you're leaning on what, feel the texture, feel that richness. Because often we don't, we kind of snap and go.
Mhm.
Some people they never come to a full halt before they take their picture.
Mm.
You know, Photography produces still images, and to be still in a landscape is very, very healing. To
Mm.
allow the, you know, what is nature around us to sort of hold us and caress us, feel the breeze, feel the rain, all of those things make up your picture. And you might have gone to photograph a pointy mountain with a waterfall, but by closing your eyes, you might have been drawn to the steady drip, drip, drip of perhaps a raindrop dropping off a single leaf. That's the picture that's calling to you. And
Wow.
that. So when I said loosely described as a landscape photographer, I work in the landscape,
Yeah.
but I've sort of taken myself out of the box of landscape photographer because I rarely sell a landscape image, um, because mine are not they're not sort of conventional in the way of sort of your calendar pictures or things like that. I tend to take a picture of a tree in the rain, or hills disappearing behind some cloud, because I find in those images they're the moments that really move me. When the landscape shields itself, it sort of makes me curious, it makes me fascinated, it offers intrigue, it challenges me. And in the silence that I bring into myself to hear the sort of pictures that I should be making in that location, that's when the intricacies and the intimate landscape starts to reveal itself. So while there is usually a beautiful picture in front of me, I will often be found looking at a leaf on a stone going, oh my goodness. And I was talking to somebody on a podcast the other day, and they said, what's the most recent picture you've taken? And I said, well, I was putting our Christmas lights up on our hedge. So we've got these lights outside,
Yeah.
and there's half a dozen yellow leaves that are left over from the winds that we've had
Mm.
against the dark brackeny sort of, not bracken, the sort of barks of the trees that make up our little hedge. And I stopped putting the lights up, and I just stood there and I was like, oh my goodness, that is just so beautiful.
Mm.
Nothing about it would sell any pictures. It would never it would probably get 2 likes on Instagram, and one would be from my mum. But there's a moment of beauty within that, of these, and some quite powerful metaphor as well of the leaves sort of they're just hanging on in there. They're giving one last blaze of beauty before winter sets in. And I really think, when you study the landscape and the things that come out of the landscape, there's so much metaphor in there. There's a huge reflection of ourselves within the landscape as well. And I think we need to slow down and listen and
Mm.
tune in to the tiny things that make the difference.
That's just absolutely exquisite, Paul. And it makes me think as well as of you know, so helpful in terms of actually how to be within the landscape and to see through fresh eyes by actually listening instead. And I guess, I you kind of sometimes think, how do you actually look at a photograph or a work of art or whatever it is with the same kind of gift of attention? But actually, you've given us an insight into actually what we might be listening for in a photograph, as well as looking
Yes,
at what we might be sensing coming
yes,
through to us that we can't quite put our finger on.
yeah. And I mean, the conflict photographer Don McCullin, who some of your followers may know, may not. Um, One of his famous quotes is, "If you can't feel anything when you make your pictures, how do you expect anybody to feel something when they look at them?" And that stays with me, because I think, while I'm not going into conflict, apart from with the dishwasher, usually on a Sunday morning, um, I I find that I feel. If I don't feel something, I find it very hard to make a picture. And usually, if I don't feel something, it's not because there's not a picture there. It's because I'm not open enough to receive it. I'm closed off in the way that I'm distracted by emails or worries about something else. So it's very easy to close ourselves off from the world where we need to be open and receptive by focusing on those small things that are in our way, or the big things that are in our way. Um, we can often lead a life where we start to become more and more blind, because we get more and more focused on the smaller thing that's in front of us. It might seem very big, but in the grand scheme of things, often they're not. and we use these distractions as reasons not to do something, when actually they're the reasons that we should be doing things, or
Right.
could be doing things.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. So golden hour. Golden
Yeah.
hour. We've got this thing where we stand outside and, you know, inspired. I mean, I just intuitively borrowed this from you know, the term from, I believe, if I'm right, has emerged from photography, that
Yeah.
this time of day, just
Yeah.
after sunrise and just before sunset, when there's something about the light. And I just thought for myself and for those of us who are doing the Advent series, what a lovely rhythm to find ourselves in, just to step out, whether it's for 5 seconds or 5 minutes, just at
Mm.
sunrise and sunset, to breathe, and to watch how the
Yeah.
light is rising or falling. But could you help us as to, you know, what's
Right.
happening with that, and what is it about light at that time? Is there anything you can help us with in that regard?
It's really because I photograph in black and white. I don't shoot color, so perhaps not the best person to ask. And weirdly, I rarely shoot at golden hour,
Right.
but that's more sort of personal choice.
Yeah.
Um, the reason golden hour works is because the sun is lower in the sky, and it illuminates things that are often in shade or have little kind of direct light on them. So you get really lovely modeling. It brings out the textures, it brings out the form. It brings out, you know, the lower the sun gets, the more it emphasizes the curves and sort of shapes of valleys, and sets out trees against what might be a dark sky or a light sky. So the lower the sun gets, the more modeling opportunities it happens, and also the warmer the light gets. So the sort of technical term is, when the sun is like that, when it's belting down on us in the middle of June and July,
Mm.
it's quite blue in terms of its light quality. The further over to the sides it gets, you know, sunset and sunrise, the warmer the light is, because it's coming through all the haze on the Earth's surface.
Mm.
So it warms up. So you've got slightly softer light because it's coming through more pollution and things. You've got the modeling, and you've got the warmer color of the light. So it makes everything look incredible. So golden hour is a fabulous time. But I always say, you know, golden hour is 2 hours of the day. There are 22 other hours where the light is equally as good. It's different because I mean, if I had £1 for every photography workshop I've done where people got out of the minibus with their tripods,
Mm.
and they went, "Oh, the light's not very good," I would be a very wealthy man. But light is never good or bad. Light is different, and different times of the day offer different qualities of light,
Mm.
and therefore different challenges. And I think that sometimes people, you know, if you're in the middle of the summer, you can't, you know, golden hour is usually when I'm still fast asleep or thinking of going to bed. So as a landscape photographer, I don't do very much photography during the summer at those times of the day.
Yeah.
But if you can make things work at golden hour, and look at the quality of light, look at where the light is going, the direction of light.
Right.
So I often get people to look at the same thing over a period of weeks. So it might be something in their house that's in the same place, and just look at even where the sun tracks the shadows on the wall, you know, the color the light goes on the wall. It is breathtaking
Mm.
to
Mm.
see that variety. And at the moment, one of the projects I'm doing, I'm getting people to photograph the sky every day for 88 days.
Wow.
So wherever they are, they have to photograph the sky at the same time, give or take, you know, so within the same hour, every single day, because we take things for granted.
Yeah.
And I said to people, you can't appreciate how beautiful something is until you appreciate the beauty in the most ordinary of things. It's something you see every day and barely acknowledge, or you say either, oh, there's not a cloud in the sky, therefore it's featureless, or you say, oh, look at that, it's really grey and horrible. Well, actually, the sky has so many things in between. It can be all colors. It can be blue, it can be gray, it can be purple, it can be green, it can be yellow. You know,
Yeah.
it's a fabulous thing. But to observe one thing for a long period of time is a really powerful way of appreciating the simple beauty that is right in front of us every single day. And if you can make it work with golden hour, even better.
Fantastic. I mean, what you're saying, thank you. That's so helpful. And it reminds me actually of that period during the lockdowns when I tried to tried to find some rhythms and practices that would help me to be present and not just be wishing this time away. And one was just to notice how much variety you see through the same window. I mean,
Yes.
we had a window that we were looking out of. One day we actually saw an owl sitting on a post. It was an extraordinary, exercise actually, and to remember that there is that
Yeah.
extraordinary spectrum of.
That's it. I mean, there's a Czech photographer, well, was a Czech photographer called Joseph Sudek, and he produced a book called, I think it's called The Studio Window, or From My Studio Window.
Oh,
Uh, and every day for years he photographed his studio window.
oh,
And the variety, I mean, you would think it's the same window, but the variety of images that are wildly different from the first one in terms of just the things that are placed in front of the window open, the window closed, perhaps it's steamed. There's so much just through one window. And you're right, if you start to pay attention to it, you very quickly start to tune in to the little things that make a big difference. And they only need to be tiny things. But people, we're impatient. We're getting more impatient.
yeah.
So to say, observe the same thing, oh, that's so boring. Oh,
Uh,
you
yeah.
know,
This is what I'm here. What I'm hearing back in our brief conversation is actually a beautiful slowing. That you're talking about, slowing into the moment, a patience.
yeah.
I wonder whether, because we ought to start wrapping this up. I wonder whether you could give those of us who love to take. We all have a camera in our pocket now, and we all kind of live life through a lens, not always in the best way. I wonder whether you would have a just one more tip. Thank you for the tips you've already given us, but one more tip that helps us to just step into that space of actually really taking a photograph rather than snapping everything that's moving. What would edge us into that?
So I always work on the basis that if something catches my eye, it's calling to me and would like to be photographed, in the same way that a needy child says, photograph me, photograph me. Often little things during the day will do that. And it might be as simple as the shadow of your teaspoon on the work surface. And it's pay attention to the mundane beauty of your everyday. So when you pick up something like your teaspoon or your favorite mug or whatever, before you kind of whisk your tea and then toss it in the dishwasher or into the sink, just look at the beauty of it, feel the weight of it, feel whether it's cold, hot, smooth, rough, textured, whether it's got a pattern. Look at the marks within it, and your attention will start to be focused. The key with being a good photographer is to practice seeing. Whether you have your camera with you or not, is to practice seeing pictures. not just to make, when you go to some great location to get right now, I'm going to make a picture. Make pictures every day of the most ordinary things, and look at the quality of light upon them. So one of the exercises that I do with a lot of groups is I get them to identify a color. So match your mood. So if I say to you, how are you feeling today, Brian? You don't need to tell me that, by the way. I can tell because you're quite you're obviously Christmassy. But and then, quietly to yourself, give that feeling a color. Okay, so then for the next day, the rest of that day, whenever you see a version of that color, just pause for a few seconds and photograph that color, wherever it is, whatever it is. By the end of the day, you will see that color everywhere, but you will start to smile to yourself every time you see it. And photography has the power to take you out of the sort of doldrums and move you into a good place if you practice seeing, because you're practicing an appreciation of life. You're practicing gratitude, and photography is a gratitude practice. The downside of that exercise is for the next week, you will not stop seeing that color. And then I get people just to make a little, if you fill the frame of your phone or your camera with that color, it doesn't matter whether it's in focus or not. And then at the end of the day or the end of the week, just print out all the little squares of color that you've got on a single sheet of A4 paper. Just print out all the little squares and then cut them up and then stick them onto another piece of paper. It doesn't have to be in any particular order. And then just write underneath what you were feeling at the beginning of the day. And every time you look at that, it will serve as an instant trigger to bring you back to a good space and remind you how powerful seeing is.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm going to try that. Thank you.
I won't ask you what color it is, but when I look at your Instagram feed, I'll know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, you mentioned, you've mentioned a few times exercises that you do with people on retreat. Before we go, just tell us what kind of things do you get up to? What can people, how can people engage with you? And where can they find you?
Oh, well, that's really kind of you. So they can find me on Instagram is the most likely place that people look. So I'm discover_still on Instagram, and my website is discoverstill.com. The retreats that I do are small groups, so usually 6 people. Most are UK based, although I'm doing a few foreign ones next year. And we do exercises, so to tune in your awareness. And they're all one location. So we'll go to, it's like a big house, stay in one house, all the catering is done. But I get people to explore the environment that we're in rather than getting a minibus and jet off to all the fancy locations. We work with what we're given. And through over a sort of 3 or 4 days, we'll then on the last day, we'll make a book. So we'll print out the pictures and we'll make a hand-sewn book, and each person has their own book. And it's amazing the response of people when they print their pictures, because most people leave them on their phone or on their hard drive.
Right.
But to hold a print in your hand is a sort of, it's such a tangible kind of pull back to the original moment when you release the shutter or tap the screen or whatever. You can feel the weight of the picture in your hand. And people who've never made a book are often daunted by the idea of making a book. But literally, all you do is you print out on a piece of A4 paper or cut it in half and print it on the A5, and you just sew them together. There's nothing fancy. It's not technical. It's not frightening. It's not daunting. And I'm not a technical person, so I don't deal in apertures and things. I deal in, how you feel at your heart. My dad is the one for apertures. He loves an aperture. If I say to my dad, what do you feel about what's in front of you? He'll go, I'm going to start with f8 at a 250, regardless of what, I'm like, Dad, what's in here? And so, well, whereas, I'm much more emotional about the moment.
Mm.
And I think trying to get people to tie into that feeling inside them and then give them something in their hand that transports them back to that also gives them a takeaway and then allows them to reflect on where they were at that time. So there's a lot of reflection, sort of exercises that aren't challenging, but just fun and lovely. There's normally lovely group sort of energy. So there's that kind of peer-to-peer learning as well, people inspiring each other. And I really enjoy that. That part when the delegates are actually learning as much from each other as they are from me, and I'm learning from them as well.
Yeah, well,
It's important that we never lose the ability to learn.
which is exactly what we do in this Advent community as well. And I think that thank you for this conversation today, because we are lifelong learners, aren't we? And I love how Ram Dass says we're all, in the end, helping each other walk each other home, and having that conversation along the way. And today you've helped us to see, to look again. I wonder, just a quick fire question. Advent,
Yes.
that's kind of about waiting and watching. And what are you watching for or looking for this year in Advent or Christmas? Come on, this is the
On the spot. What am I looking for
yeah.
this year? Um, what I'm hoping for is snow.
Yeah.
That's what I'd really like.
Yeah.
Um, I'm hoping for the quietness.
Right.
What I'm looking for at the moment are pictures that illustrate the quietness that I want to achieve within me at the moment. That's the sort of image I'm looking for. Um, and if I find quietness at home, then that'll be fantastic. So we can just sort of calm down and step out of the year a little bit
Yeah.
and get back to the important values of the people that make our lives richer, rather than the things that make our lives richer.
Beautiful.
So yeah, and I'm hoping more people pick up rubbish.
Yeah.
My wish for next year is that everybody going out taking pictures would take a carrier bag with them and just fill it with rubbish that they find, and then dispose of it when they get home, rather than walking past it tutting, which is what we tend to do. I mean, I'm as guilty as the next one. You go past it and you go, oh, because if we don't respect the world that we live in, it's not going to be beautiful much longer. And I think we need to proactively look after it.
Too right. I think I saw on Instagram or somewhere today you saying that
It
this was your top tip for landscape photographer for
is, yeah,
photography, is to take the rubbish away. And I
absolutely,
absolutely love
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, people keep asking me what's my top tip for photography, and I think the number of photographers I hear go, oh, look at that crisp packet. Oh, I'll take that out in Photoshop. And it's like, just pick it up and move it.
Now.
Put it in a bag. Oh, but it's not mine. Doesn't matter. Take it away with you. Sorry, rant over.
Brilliant.
Apologize.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Paul, we're so grateful for your time, your insight, your example, your presence, your craft, and your encouragement today. I'll put the links that you mentioned in underneath the this so that people can click and find you. But thank you for joining us and for sharing with our Advent community, and for being part of the wider community of those of us who are exploring and expressing life and faith creatively, with wonder and curiosity and courage. So bless you, and hopefully we'll see you again at some point before long. Thank
I
you.
hope so. Thank you very much, Brian. Thanks.